Hey, well, welcome everyone. And it's a great pleasure to have an amazing panel with us here this evening to talk about the Bachelor of Sciences in Pharmaceutical Sciences program at the University of Rhode Island. My name is David Rowley. I'm a professor in the Department of Biomedical and Pharmaceutical Sciences in the College of Pharmacy at URI. And I think that the BSPS program, as we call it, is one of the true gems of all the majors that we offer at the University of Rhode Island. It lies right at the intersection of biology and chemistry, really with a target towards understanding how we can improve human health. And what astounds me more than anything else is the breadth of career paths that our graduates take. They are, of course, involved in research involving the discovery of new medicines. They pursue graduate degrees, master's, PhD. They sometimes pursue other healthcare-related graduate degrees, such as pharmacy and medicine. Some of our grads become involved in the business aspect of things and sales. Some have become venture capitalists and advisors to politicians, but at the heart of it all is the science. And I think that the training that they get will allow for any number of things to happen. And so it's these events like we have here, recording here this evening, if you're joining us live or watching this later on, where we get to hear from people who have been through the program and the wonderful things that they've been able to do. These are the most satisfying times for me, because this is what we're all about, is seeing people being successful in their lives. So I won't say too much more. What I want to do right now is I want to hand things over to our very capable moderator, Emily Kay, to introduce herself, and then she will introduce us to this amazing panel that we have set up. Emily.
Hello. So just a quick apology again, but thank you for allowing me to be the moderator tonight. Like they said earlier, my name is Emily Kay. I'm currently a fourth-year PhD student in Dr. Angela Slitt's lab. I got my undergrad at URI, and I'm currently pursuing the PhD at URI. But just as Dr. Rowley said, this is kind of just an idea of kind of an overview of the general BSPS program, some career advice, and general kind of ideas about URI as a whole, because we have both current students and some incoming students. So we do have a great panelist tonight, and I'm going to have them introduce themselves in just a minute. But I do have a list of questions, some URI-based, some general-based, so we can kind of touch into each of those pools. But also, like Aaron said in the beginning, we do want to have this kind of be a nice discussion. I feel like that's usually kind of the best way to facilitate all these questions and just kind of general interactions. So I'm going to start off for the introduction. So if you can say your name, what program you did at URI, either undergrad or grad, and when you graduated from URI, and then you can tell us a little bit about your current position. So we can start off with Nishan, if you would like.
Sure. So thank you guys for having me, having the rest, well, all of us, I guess. So my name's Nishan. I graduated from the University of Rhode Island in 2015 with my bachelor's degree. And then I stayed at URI until 2019 when I graduated with my PhD. I'm currently a senior manager in drug product development at Arranta Bio, which is a CDMO that specializes in advanced therapies. So day-to-day ops is overseeing all of the work that goes into drug product development for our clients, whether it be tech transfer or R&D level work.
That's awesome. I can have the next person go if they would like. Rachel.
was talking, I was muted, sorry. My name is Rachel Whiting. I studied undergrad at URI and graduated also in 2015 with Nishan. We were classmates. I currently am a formulation scientist at Depison Pharmaceuticals. They specialize in over-the-counter liquid product formulations as well as topical cosmetics.
Nice, great, thank you. And Cam?
Sure. So I'm Cam. I graduated from URI in 2017 with the bachelor's degree in pharmaceutical science with a minor in biology. The current position is with a company called ArcherDx, who is a part of IDT, Integrated DNA Technologies, who is a part of Danaher, a conglomerate that does a whole bunch of life science stuff. I do liquid handling automation for next-gen sequencing workflows. So we have an RUO kit, and I am working on getting that lab work done in a big robot. I write scripts for that. Thanks for having me.
Cool, thank you. And we'll finish up with Sonja.
Hi, everyone. Thanks for having me. Thank you for having all of us. So I'm Sonja Knowles. So I graduated in 2016 with my bachelor's from URI. I then went to the University of North Carolina at Greensboro, where I got a PhD in chemistry, specifically natural product chemistry, which is some of the research that actually happens at URI as well. So my current roles, I'm a scientist at Procter & Gamble. So I'm specifically in their hair care division. So I'm sure most of you have heard of Procter & Gamble. It's very large. So I'm specifically just in one organization. And so mainly what my role is we work on finding botanicals that have some sort of functional benefit for hair care. So my everyday role is I manage people and kind of work a project and get it to start to finish to find some botanicals that have hair care benefits.
All right, well, thank you all for introducing yourselves. So like I said, I have some URI questions and some more kind of BSPS career-based questions. So we're gonna start a little general and then we'll narrow it down as we go. So just to kind of kick it off, why did you initially choose URI? You can each kind of start or kind of give a little information each, but you can kind of choose whoever wants.
Sure, I guess I can jump in first. When I was looking for schools, I was sort of looking at a number of different pharmaceutically related schools. So Albany College of Pharmacy, Mass College of Pharmacy, and URI was just sort of a suggestion from my parents as something to go and check out. And when I went and visited, it was a place that I sort of fell in love with. The feel, the location close to the ocean. It was far enough from home, having grown up in New Hampshire, that I could still go back, but not so close that I felt like I was still in my backyard. Having the ability to get regional tuition, as none of the New Hampshire schools offered any pharmaceutical science programs, was fantastic. The visit times in like the spring when all the flowers start to bloom was just gorgeous, and it was nice to get to a school unlike Albany College or Mass College, where they felt really sort of small and condensed. This was a really big school, so there was lots of opportunity to meet lots of people and experience a whole bunch of stuff. That's what really drove me there.
So for me, I knew I wanted to do something along pharmaceutical drug development discovery. I didn't want to be a pharmacist. And I also didn't want to do chemistry. And so I was trying to just find something that was in between. And I happened to find the major pharmaceutical sciences, and I just looked up schools that offered it. And URI happens to be one of them. There isn't all that many. And so I toured them all, and URI just felt more right. It was bigger, just like Cam was saying. And so it didn't feel too small or niche. And there was a lot of other majors. So while you have your major, you could take like electives in a whole variety of things, which is something that was very appealing to me.
Yeah, for me too, I was looking into going into either pharmaceutical sciences or biotechnology. So URI and Quinnipiac were like my number ones schools. I personally did like to be close to home. I am from Rhode Island, so I wanted to be able to see family and friends. And it was close enough to, drive home, but far enough away, in Rhode Island, such a small state, 40 minutes seems like a long drive. But all the new science buildings really drew me in because they're wonderful facilities too, which was great.
Yeah, I'm similar to Rachel. I wanted to stay close to home. I'm really close with my family, and URI is only about 20 minutes away. Um, and the programs there were really impressed me. I came in as bio and pre-med, and URI actually has a really good track record of individuals going to med school, and so I saw that as being a pretty good opportunity for me. And then I ended up adding the major of pharmaceutical science, and then went in that direction. But I originally picked it because I wanted to be close to my family, so a little bit easier.
All right, thank you. Those are all great answers, kind of a wide array of reasons. So kind of get into a little another area. How do you think URI has prepared you for, say, your current position?
I guess I'll go first again. The sort of the BSPS program had such a breadth of things that they covered. It exposes you to a lot of different aspects of sort of medical science. Not all of it. I mean, you sort of become a jack of all trades and a master of none, but that's not necessarily a bad thing, because then you get exposure to all these different areas that you could explore further. And then as you start to do these things, whether it's in grad school or in an industrial setting, you start to put all those pieces together, the bits and pieces that you've taken from each of these courses that you've done, and you find the ones that are applicable and the ones that you latch onto, and you can really move forward with that. I think that the breadth of exposure was fantastic.
Yeah, I think so too. Going to school and getting all of the different experience and all of the different areas of the fields that you can go into, as well as taking those classes in time management and organization and staying on top of things. You're going to have to do that same exact thing in your job. And if you can, kind of perfect that when you're in school, it'll carry you very far in your workload.
Definitely feel the same way. There's a lot of breadth, but I think one thing that really helped prepare was the fact that undergraduate research is the thing. So you can learn a bunch of stuff in a classroom and you can learn all this knowledge, but it gets harder to apply it once you enter the real world. Unless you have some sort of hands-on knowledge, you kind of get like a leg up. So honestly, the fact that they even have undergraduate research is something that really helps you regardless of the field you go into, because it's still hands-on laboratory research.
Yeah, and a lot of programs out there, they don't really let undergrads do much. I actually remember when Sonja was an undergrad doing research with Dr. Serum. But Sonja can attest to this. She got a lot of opportunities to actually get in there and use her hands. And Cam and Emily, you guys had the same opportunities too. Because I remember when you guys were undergrads. I'm the resident old guy when it comes to all the panelists here. I believe I taught 3 out of the 4 that are sitting here. So, but yeah, so from my perspective, what I've noticed is that, undergraduates, given the opportunity, can actually get in and get their hands dirty. And so, from the perspective of, when you do move on to the next steps, looking at that stuff is really important. Because, having good grades is great, but applying it is really important. And so, the BSPS program really puts you in a good position to do that. Even with, I don't know if, Dr. King, if you guys still do the class on Fridays where you guys can come in and, learn some of the techniques and things like that. But that class I found to be really useful for the undergraduates that I was working with.
All right, thank you. So we were talking about the kind of BSPS curriculum just a tad. So I want to dive in just a hair more to that. So a little bit, I'll give you kind of some examples for you to dive into, but kind of just a general comment on the BSPS curriculum in terms of, say, flexibility to choose electives, kind of the breadth of the coursework that you're exposed to, any of the interdisciplinary offerings. And I know me personally, I had gotten a minor in biology. And kind of the advantages to some secondary majors or also additional minors within
Yeah, so I can jump in and give Cam a break from, being the guinea pig for all the questions. So I mean, when it comes to the electives that you can choose from, it's absolutely wonderful that you don't get siloed into saying, okay, you only have to take BSPS classes. Like you can dip a little bit more into chemistry, you can dip a little bit more into statistics if that's what you like. But the flexibility of the program itself offers two things. It offers you the ability to figure out what you like, but more importantly, at this stage, figuring out what you don't like. So if you take all the classes and you say, yeah, I did great in pharmacology, but I don't really like that. Well, now and you can figure out how you can tailor some of your future courses, or even if you choose to do undergraduate research, to doing those other things. And that was one of the reasons why, a couple of us, at least in my graduating class, we jumped from lab to lab because we figured out, hey, we didn't like this, but we really liked that. So that flexibility is really nice. And I think the professors are really understanding of that too. So if you don't like something, it's okay to say that you don't. Like when you're doing the research, and you can sit down and say, hey, listen, Professor so-and-so, this isn't a great fit for me. But I do like this other work. Can you guide me in the right direction? I always felt like the professors were really on your side. It's such a small program. It's such an intimate program that the professors learn about you, and they learn about you not just inside the classroom, but also in the lab and you personally. So that's another thing that I found to be really important.
I completely agree with what Nishan was saying on that aspect completely. And then also there's so much diversity as well that you see things you didn't even know existed. I honestly didn't know natural products was a thing until I started at URI, and there's professors doing that research, and then there was classes. And then I personally just fell in love with it. And people always ask me, well, how did you start in this random niche role? And I'm like, oh, well, my undergraduate offered it, and it was really interesting, and it's something I didn't know existed. So it allows you to look at things that you might not have known coming from high school. There was even a thing you could major in, get a PhD in, master's, find a company that does it. So it's something that I thought was very beneficial as well.
Yeah, they offer a ton of electives as well as, lab work that just lets you gear. And like Nishan said, I mean, find what you like and find what you don't like. I knew as soon as I started in the formulation and manufacturing lab class, like that's what I wanted to do. I knew I wanted to be hands-on, and I hope that carried over into my workload.
Yeah, and I mean the exposures that you have are super useful in facilitating relationships, either in your other labs or at work, if that's what you're doing. That's what I've been doing. If I'm working in a nucleic acids lab, it's one thing, but I can also talk to the people next door who are working on protein stuff about what they're doing, because I've had some exposure to those sorts of things. And the only other thing I had to add on this sort of thought is, since you have the opportunity to build in all of these other classes, it's definitely a good idea to do so. Maybe support your academics with a little bit of business, or what I really should have done better was more math, more programming understanding and statistical understanding, because that stuff's, it's hit me hard now, and trying to understand it outside of school is a lot more difficult than having the access to actual teachers at a professional setting that are designed is designed to do that for you. It's not really a great way to say that, but there to do that for you.
Great, thank you. So touched on a little bit of maybe gaining some experience in undergrad, and kind of also how that can be helpful either post-grad, whether it be right into work or into a graduate study. So whether it be internal at URI with one of the professors or any external, how did the research opportunities or fellowships, internships, whatever you would like to call it, or wherever it was, how did that help you just maybe while you were still in school in the BSPS program, but also kind of in that transition phase, whether it be to grad or to straight to career?
So there have been instances where Well, just from a personal level, having had the hands-on experience in the labs made it a lot easier to learn whatever it was that you're doing next. It's having been on the other side of this, having trained people who've come in new or interviewed people who are applying for a job. It's fairly obvious for someone who's had no experience, and that's sort of a red flag from that side to say, well, not only are we teaching them our way of doing things, but we're also teaching them the basics of how to handle a pipette or what is aseptic technique or whatever. But the exposure to those sorts of things early on in labs, but also in the research setting at school, it gives you a leg up for sure moving into anything that you might be working towards after that.
I think one of the other things that I really love to look for in people, especially newly graduated students, is their excitement, right? So you're not going to be expected to know everything under the sun when you walk in. If you did, we would ask why, right? So I look for, how excited is this person to come in and do their job? How excited is this person coming into wanting to learn? How hungry are they, right? And so I think one of the things that, the program and just in general, intern experience, whatever jobs, you really figure out what gets you excited, what gets you up in the morning, gets you all, smiling and happy, even if the experiments aren't going well. And I've had experiences where, I figured out I couldn't do something for the rest of my life because I wasn't excited to do it. But the job that I'm in now, the group that I'm with now, the work that I'm doing now, I'm excited to get up and go to work every single day. And if you're in an interview, people are going to be able to read that, especially if they're seasoned at interviewing folks. So finding what you like and enjoying it is going to be super important.
Yeah, I would say I didn't have too much of undergrad research experience or internships. I applied and maybe it wasn't the best of my luck. But like Nishan said, when I got out of school, I was excited to just see where my career path was going to take me. Just the willingness to work and wanting to do a great job. And I think sometimes that really gets you far.
Yeah, and then I also wanted to add that in, like kind of what Nishan was saying, how we don't expect you to know everything. So when we interview people, like I fully expect to fully retrain them in everything. They think they know how to hold a pipette, but I'm going to reteach them anyways. And so while it's great that you have undergraduate research, and you totally should, because it will help you in your career get going faster. So I don't have to teach you 5 times to hold a pipette. But even then, like everyone's going to retrain you. So kind of just find the thing that you really like. And by doing undergraduate research, by doing internships, it really just helps you in that aspect, because you can tell if someone isn't actually interested when you're interviewing them.
Yeah, it was a great counterpoint from Nishan that drive is far more important than skills. Skills can be taught, but personality can't. So just be excited, at least try, have the motivation to be trying to do better.
All right, so kind of a little bit of advice before we move on to some other questions. So is there anything you wish you kind of knew either before going into undergrad, so as you're entering URI to begin with, or before you're entering the career world or another graduate study? Is there anything you wish you knew kind of before going into that, or anything you would also additionally done differently?
Yeah, I would say, don't be afraid to get things wrong. Don't be afraid to fail. And don't be super stressed over your grades. The thing that you want to be stressed out more is being able to apply what you learn. Application is key. Getting your hands in there is key. All of that stuff is really important. Just compared to, being able to memorize and spit out information. So what I would suggest would be, when you're studying for an exam, studying for a class, study with the intent of remembering it, not just memorizing it so you can spit it out on an exam, because you never know, that stuff's going to come up again. The stuff from dosage forms 2, calculations, I do that stuff every day. I do this stuff every single day. Dosage forms 2 and 3, and that's literally 10 years ago. So when you're studying for your class, study with the intent of remembering and study with the intent of applying, because that stuff's going to come back. It really will.
Yeah, definitely. The other thing I think I sort of alluded to it a little bit earlier is supplement your learning with some of the other classes that are useful, such as statistics. Take a Comp Sci 101 class. These things, they're becoming more and more integrated into science. So having the basics of how programming works is a good thing to have under your belt. A basic understanding of really simple statistical analysis is a great thing to have under your belt. Just tools to have at your disposal.
I think for me, like going into school, I wish I could tell my younger self to just be more open to new experiences and trying out different things, just not like the core curriculum. You do get to branch out with electives, but just to be a little bit more bold in my decisions.
I might be the only one that says there's nothing I really would change about what I thought URI was great. I feel like they taught you really well to be broad and don't be narrow. And so that's something that I'm very thankful for going through the program. And then when it comes to leaving the program, the same thing, like your grades are very, very important, but they're really not going to make or break anything. As long as you basically get a degree and do half well on all your exams, it's fine. Everything will come back. Everything. Like I don't do any pharmaceutical work. I work on basically making shampoos, but all of it still comes into play because you're still human. And so everywhere you go, it's still involved with people. So you'll meet with people that will say things and you're like, oh yes, that all makes perfect sense. I remember learning that back in an undergrad class. And then you don't look like the dummy in the room that has no idea what's going on. You have some sort of background and understanding. So as long as you understand the basics and can learn that, don't just memorize, spit it out and forget, everything will come back and it'll be great when you get in your careers.
Well, let me jump in here and ask a question. And one of the things that I would like to know is what did you like most about URI outside of the College of Pharmacy? What were some of the things that you did, or what do you think, what are some of the moments that you remember about being at URI that make you smile these days when you think back on it?
Well, it's in a beautiful location. I think as Cam said earlier, you're so close to the beach. I wish I had never taken that for granted. I probably will never happen again living right across the street from the ocean. The connections that you make, some will last lifetimes. I have friends that I still talk to every single day. The campus is beautiful. There's a lot of great things to love about URI.
Yeah, you're going to meet people that you're going to be able to take along with you in your journey for the rest of your life. We've got friends we've been close for 13 years. I've been to their weddings. I've met their kids. I'm doing the photography for my friend's wedding in July. Like, there's a lot more than just your classes. You meet a lot of lifelong friends, and who knows, maybe even a partner. So the people really make me thankful because, URI is really inclusive when you sit back and you think about it, especially the way that they even put together, even the freshman dorms, for example. Like you meet people from all different facets of life. So it's something that I'm really thankful for is that inclusiveness.
I think also, what Rachel said, you're never going to be that close to the beach. And another benefit that has for it that people might not notice as much as people don't live near the beach in the winter. And so the students get to live there and you kind of get a little taste of, oh, this is what it's like to have rent. I don't just live in a dorm. So you kind of get a little dose of, oh, I'm leaving here eventually. And this is how you handle groceries. This is how you handle all of this, which is, you don't realize how beneficial it is until you actually leave and you leave your parents' house and you're like, well, I have to pay rent. How do I do all of this? And so something that's super beneficial. And then as Nishan was saying, you meet a whole bunch of people. I did meet my husband at URI. And so you will meet tons of people and they'll be your lifelong partners or best friend. My best friend is I met at URI. And so I wouldn't change any of those connections for anything.
Yeah, I mean, talk about taking the beach for granted. There's no beach out here in Colorado. And humidity too. It's about 10% humidity all year round. It's very dry. I had to get very used to lotion and chapstick. The other thing that was fantastic for me while I was there was the intramural sports. They were so much fun. Those are some of the best friends that I made were just, you know, playing sports at a relatively calm level. I don't even remember. It must have been twice a week. It was awesome. It was just so much fun. I still wear my Rhode Island intramural champion shirt just because I can, just because I have it. Had a blast. And the gym too. I mean, having that close access to gym for free is something that I absolutely took for granted. Well, I don't know, I used it all the time, but now that I don't have access to it, I miss it very dearly.
Cam's living out the glory days of intramural sports. I do too, don't worry.
Meanwhile, I twist my ankle going out to the mailbox.
I threw my back out sneezing, I understand.
Hey, well, I have a question. I think this one's more for Rachel and for Sonja, because when people think about pharmaceutical sciences, they tend to think about drugs. And you both are now involved in cosmetics and personal care. And I'm wondering if you could just comment on the transition into that element, because I've long thought that pharmaceutical science is a perfect jumping off point for career paths in those areas, but I don't think that people often think about it.
Yeah, so I did start off in drug development. So I started off in research and development for a generic pharmaceutical company. And there I learned all of the tools and techniques that could branch out into cosmetics, you know, creating batch formulas and lab, you know, obviously just how to work in the lab. And but cosmetics is, you know, you can apply it just as well because it's a similar formulation and development.
So I'm not on the formulation side of cosmetics. I'm on the discovery side in cosmetics. But it's been super helpful for definitely, I can think of two major reasons. And one is everything is still mechanistic. So while you learn in school, oh, you need to find this compound does this and it goes to the whole mechanism and the drug metabolism, I still have to think mechanistically. And so it helps to understand, oh, the mechanism is this, you need this type of chemistry, which you also learn when you have BSBS program. So it doesn't matter what you're doing, you still get that. And then the other side of it is everything needs to go through safety. And so what is safety? It's a person. And so you have to make sure it's still safe for the person. So while you're not ingesting my shampoo, at least I hope you're not, you're still putting it on your body. It's still going to be near your eyes. And so it has to go through a whole safety assessment. There's a large assessment that people probably don't realize it's happening. And you as a scientist are involved in that because you know what you're working on. So they ask you tons of questions. And if you have any tiny bit of background, it makes the process so much less painful because no matter where you work, there's going to be safety involved.
Yeah, well, that's a great point. And you know, we have people in our program that like to make cosmetics at their homes, you know, and want to pursue this as a career path. And I think it's totally viable, and I'm excited about that. And so I'm glad that we've had some representation here of people who are now involved in that type of, you know, personal care in cosmetics. It's fantastic. And then on the other side, Cam, you mentioned that you're involved in high throughput screening. And so you're working with robotics, and this couldn't be further from cosmetics, just kind of showing the diversification of the career paths one can take. So can you say something more about, you know, what it's like to spend your day, you know, with the robots?
For sure, yeah. So I started out, the first job that I had out of college was in a clinical lab. So, you know, I was doing bench work all day, every day. We had samples that came in, we had data that we put out. It was for clinical diagnostic reasons. I transferred out of the clinical lab and into the R&D lab, who were working on developing high throughput solutions for the clinical lab. And so I had trained in, see, now I've forgotten the town. It's a Massachusetts town just north of Rhode Island, where Hamilton Robotics is located. And so I went on site there, trained with them for about a week on how to work with their instruments. And that was so much fun. I had a blast doing it and really liked the combination of having the biological side and the programming side and putting those together. So solving biological problems with software was something I really love doing, and it's something I'm still doing now, just in a different location. And luckily it's chemistry agnostic, right? So I was working in a nucleic acid extraction lab prior, and now I'm working in a next-gen sequencing lab, and it's still automation. The robot doesn't care what you're doing. When I was training with a guy who was doing compound synthesis for Bridgestone tires. So it's very applicable in different places.
And my guess is that while we're having this conversation, your robots are still working, right?
Not mine. I'm still working on getting them happy and running, but lots of people are running them 24/7 in those sort of high throughput labs. Yeah.
Yeah, very cool. And Nishan, maybe you could say something about, the formulations aspect and how the biology and the chemistry all comes together, because I think, again, this is an area of pharmaceutical sciences that is probably lost or not well understood by those who are considering the major, and yet is just a really vital aspect of how we can create drugs and get them into people so that they can do their magic.
Yeah, so I mean the way that I've always approached it is that you can have the greatest drug on the planet. It could be absolutely perfect, but if you can't figure out a way to get it to where it needs to go, it doesn't matter, right? So formulation development, R&D, process development, tech transfer, that's all the center point of what we do, right? So medicinal chemistry is upstream, then you go through the pharmacology. I have to take all of that into account, especially with nucleic acids. So we do a lot of LNP work. We also do polymer work. All of that stuff has to be taken into account, because when we're designing formulation, we have to think about the cargo, but we also need to think about the different lipids that we're going to be using. So your ionizable lipid may be different for each material that you use. So there are a lot of things that go into it. The way that I've looked at formulation development and pharmaceutics in its entirety is it's a giant puzzle. It's one of the reasons why I love it so much. So it really is all encompassing. So knowing a little bit of everything really helps you in the long run.
Yeah, I think being a scientist is really about being a problem solver, and those of us who like puzzles are drawn to science, and then each one of you is solving these issues. Nishan, you're right in the middle. You've got somebody discovering a drug, and you have a patient over here who needs that drug, and you're figuring how can we make the match so that
So what my team will do is we'll bring a process in, and whether it's a small scale or a large scale, we'll bring the process in, and the whole idea behind my team is how do we get this to translate into GMP and into manufacturing. So we're going to take a process and we'll scale it up 10x, 20x, 30x to bring it into GMP so that we can get an appropriate amount of material out for phase 1, phase 2, phase 3, or even commercial operations. And so, a lot of things go into that. There's a lot of engineering that goes into it too when we're designing our mixers, for example. But we also need to go back to our fundamentals, right? So in lipid chemistry, in LNP and all of that stuff, there's something called critical micelle concentration. So it's basically the amount of lipids required to make a micelle. We need to think about that stuff and know that what we're doing and the way that we're scaling up is still appropriate to get our outputs. So there is a lot that goes into this stuff.
Sounds like a lot of work, and you might need some of Cam's robots to get some.
Actually, it's funny that you mentioned that, because my team is actually working to automate our mixers at the small scale. I have two guys that are working on building a program for it. So
terrific. Yeah. And Sonja, what do you see in terms of automation that's going on right now on your end over at Procter & Gamble? Is that also a part of your shop?
Oh yeah, we try to automate everything. P&G doesn't have any issues throwing money for robots.
So do
And
you have
so we-
robots that are working for you right now?
Yeah, always. We do a whole bunch of measurements all the time. And so if we can automate it, it just makes our lives easier because once again, I'm one person. And so, well, I don't get in the lab all that often anymore. My project team does. And so there's still one person. And so a robot can run overnight and get me tons of sample points, but I can really only get a couple during the day. So we try to automate them all the time. We automate our processing in the plants. They're definitely something. And so if you know programming at all, even just a tiny bit, it's like the most beneficial thing in the planet, because we try to use programming to write scripts all the time too, so that we don't have to waste our time manually analyzing data.
Well, it sounds like a lot of the things that you guys do are pretty technical. And I'm just curious as to whether or not you felt like when you got to the positions, especially, you know, the initial ones, but even the ones that you're in currently, like you felt like you were prepared for those from working with the instrumentation, the coursework that we had, but in particular, you know, the laboratory settings that you were exposed to at URI. Did you feel a certain level of comfort once you got into you know, the labs beyond college?
So I think at the end of the day, you're never going to feel like you're fully prepared, right? And no matter what, because it's new, you never know what's going to happen. But you know, as comfortable as you can be, I would say that I personally was put in a really good position to feel comfortable and confident in myself to be able to do it. But you always have that fear of like, okay, my supervisor, what is he going to think of me? He's probably going to think I'm not prepared, blah, blah, blah. Because you always have that expectation of yourself. But the self-confidence is really important. And I can say that the program prepared me really well for the things that I was going to be able to do at my last company and at my current one. You know, I use the example, I use pharmaceutical calculations all the time, right? So having that confidence and the ability to say, yes, I know these numbers are right, it goes a long way. And people can smell your fear. People can smell if you're not confident in yourself. So that's the other thing, you know, when you know something, know that you know it and own that. And if you're going to be wrong confidently. There's nothing wrong with that, but be humble about it too.
Great. Sonja, did you feel like you were prepared when you went to graduate school? You know, when you had to start diving into your PhD work?
Yes, definitely. So I went from undergrad to PhD, and when you get to a PhD, they pretty much expect you to know exactly what you're doing and to do it. And so I felt very prepared on that aspect. Granted, it helped that I went from a natural product lab to a natural product lab, but even then, I still understood what to do. I knew how to hold a pipette. I knew the logic behind trying to formulate even an experiment and what to do and how to critical think and all of that. So I think it more prepared me on the side of being able to think like a scientist than more I knew how to run the instruments, because you're never going to know how to run everything. And there's always new things that pop up. And while I did the same technically thing, instruments are completely different. And so I had to learn those all over, but I knew how to think scientifically. And that's something that I learned from being at URI and doing undergraduate research. And even in the classes, they get you to critically think. It's not in the BSPS program, just remember something and spit it out. It's more of like critical thinking and logic to get to your answer.
Terrific. I'll let Cam and Rachel chime in. Should you have any thoughts that you'd like to share?
Yeah, I was just gonna say too, like, don't underestimate the like power of being hands-on. Like at my first job, I never knew how much I would need like mechanical work, even just using screwdrivers, wrenches, to set up tablet presses, blenders, fluid beds. Like you just like even just setting up like, you know, IKEA furniture could help me in my job just to be more comfortable with being a little bit more hands-on in the lab.
Yeah, and I just wanted to sort of reiterate what someone else had said. Nobody's expecting you to know everything. So what you are equipped with and what you learn at URI is enough knowledge to ask questions, ask the right questions. You don't necessarily understand all the components that are going into this primer panel. You can ask the right questions about, well, why are we looking at these panels? And you can understand the response that they give you. It's like if you went to France and you had a little book and it said, this is how you say, how do I go to the bathroom? And then they say, well, the bathroom's up the road and on the left, and you don't understand any of that. Does you no good. But this program has equipped me, will equip you, has equipped us with the tools to understand the answers that come to us and ask the right questions to get the answers we're looking for. Definitely ask questions.
I really appreciate those perspectives because I don't know everything, and I'm always trying to learn something new, and things are breaking in my lab, and I got to get the screwdrivers out, and my students are watching me crawl underneath the machine and try to fix it or change the oil or whatever, and you just got to go for it and have that confidence, and that's what we're all about. Emily, I want to turn it back to you, and we have a little bit of time left. Maybe you want to finish up this panel with another question or two.
Yeah, sorry about that. It randomly. Yeah, and then it would load me back on.
Emily, I think you're in outer space
But,
right now.
I don't know if you touched upon this. It sounds like you kind of started,
There you go.
but do you kind of, while you're at your, oh, I don't, okay, how about now? Is that any better?
It's better. Yeah, it's better.
It's better. Okay. Took my headphones out. I'm going to hold them here. But did you join any professional organizations while you were at URI that kind of helped you either go on to the career or go on to grad school? Was there any experiences within that professional organization that you think were valuable to you during your time at URI?
Yeah, so I can say that the AAPS chapter at URI did some really good stuff while I was there. And they still are, and I'm still a member of AAPS. I would encourage everybody to join it if you have the ability to. They provide you with a lot of good opportunities, a lot of networking opportunities, and potentially things that you can bring to your future endeavors, whether it's a company or whatever. I presented the option to a couple of folks at my last job, and they absolutely loved it. But in terms of helping, AAPS was a really good one to join. But it depends. I mean, there's so many professional groups that you can join. There's ACS, there's Biomaterials, there's Controlled Release Society, there's a pharmacognosy group. There's a whole bunch of them. You have plenty of options.
I wasn't a part of any professional clubs, but I did have BSPS club at the time, and it lets you intermingle with like the other people in other grades, and you will not believe how many times you come across in this field bumping into people. So it's always nice to like see those familiar faces, and just be able to catch up and have a little in.
Yeah, I mean, one of the guys from chemical engineering that went to URI, he's on my team. I mean, we've got a bunch of people from URI just at my company, so you never know.
You never know.
Yeah, BSPS was cool too, because I mean, it sort of gives you this is what a meeting's like experience, and how a meeting goes. You have someone who's taking meeting notes, and this is how they distribute it to people afterwards, and this is who's in charge, and this is what they're talking about. Those sorts of things are happening. I'm sure I do grad school, but I'm sure you're having those kinds of meetings in grad school, and you have them when you're in the workforce as well.
I didn't join any professional things when I was an undergrad, to be honest with you. But I think something that should be touched upon is the fact that the professors are all extremely helpful. So if you're not sure what to do or you need connections, or the place I did my PhD, I only knew about them because Dr. Serum mentioned them. And I was like, oh, I don't know if I want to go to North Carolina, but I'll check them out. And then it happened to basically, I went there. So it changed my course of my career. And so while I didn't join any, it doesn't mean they're probably extremely beneficial. I've joined them now since grad school, and they are very beneficial. But in undergrad, the professors know so much more than what they teach you in class. And they're all very helpful and very nice. And so you can reach out to any of them, and they can probably pinpoint you in directions of careers or places or whatnot.
Yeah, I mean, just always remember that your professors have their PhD and they have research labs for a reason, and they got there for a reason. So just because they don't teach you they're not going to teach you everything in class doesn't necessarily mean that they don't know it, right? There's a reason why they are your professor, they're teaching you, and they have labs and students. But don't be afraid to ask questions. I mean, all of you guys know Dr. Shen. You can ask her how many times I used to stop by her office my last year of grad school. It was at least once a day, if not more than once a day. Don't be afraid to ask questions. If anything, I would encourage you to. I know that when I've got new folks on my teams, the folks that ask the questions are the ones that I really want to work with because they're the ones that are genuinely interested.
And we've had
Yeah.
a lot of really good advice here tonight, and we're at about an hour into this panel discussion. And so without overtaxing our panelists, I think we'll probably call this to a close. And I hope that those of you who have had a chance to join us and hear this conversation have learned something about pharmaceutical sciences, and in particular, the program that we have at the College of Pharmacy at the University of Rhode Island. You can see the building that we're in just over my shoulder here in this fake background that's making you think that I'm at URI tonight. And we have a wonderful facility, a modern research facility with amazing classrooms. And I invite anyone who is interested in this major to please come visit us. I want to thank Emily Kay for her expert moderation here tonight. I want to thank Aaron Edmonds for helping us to put together this fantastic panel and planning this event. And I want to thank each of these wonderful panelists. It's been a real pleasure for me to hear your stories, your reflections. I would say that the reason why I run a laboratory, why I get up and go into work every day is because I get to work with people like you. And that's what makes my job enjoyable. That's what makes it happen for me. So I really appreciate you. And I look forward to catching up with you in the future and hearing about the wonderful things that you're going to be doing even further down the road, because believe it or not, you guys are all still young and you have big careers ahead of you. So, go get it and go Rhode.